Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to yet another episode of All Things Conservative. My name is Tyler Bruner, stepping in for the position of Dalton Walker. He just got his wisdom teeth pulled out today, and it was just glorious. He's hurting real bad, so we cannot talk. So it's just me, Job Saunders, Connor Essery, and Laura Peterson for today. And we got a fun topic today. We have the Second Amendment and how glorious it is. So I don't have any prompt questions because Dalton didn't give us any before he got his teeth pulled out. So I think we're just going to go for it. I don't know. So the Second Amendment. So we talked about the First Amendment for, I don't know, second or third episode, and that was a pretty great conversation that we had. And now we have the ever famous Second Amendment and gun control and all that fun topics that comes with that. That is kind of ridiculous to think about, So let's hear you guys' opinions about the Second Amendment. Joby, if you want to hit it off, I don't go for it because this is one you've been waiting for, buddy.
Yeah, this is after all one of my favorite topics, but someone kind of pulled me into the process.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Where to start? It's such a fun topic to talk about because really, in the end, it just comes down to logic and common sense in the facts,
Would you like me to read the Second Amendment real quick?
If you like to, please.
Sure. For those of you who have not read the Constitution, it's a great piece. The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So our God-given right to bear arms in this country is protected. It's great.
I want to point out that the reason that's so important is because we took this country from a government who was tyrannical.
Mm-hmm.
The Second Amendment is not in place for hunting. It's not in place for even self-defense. What it's in place for is you have checks and balances in the United States Constitution to prevent a tyrannical government. Well, if everyone goes tyrannical, your citizens are your last line of defense in your check and balance system. So the right to bear arms means if your government fails you have the right to step up and say, no, we're not going to let this happen again.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think that's one thing that people don't necessarily understand about the Second Amendment. It's put in place because of that reason. And people are like, well, why do you not trust your government? It's like, well, okay, I trust them for a lot of things, but if that happens, then I'm prepared and I'm ready.
Well, my other question is, why should you trust your government?
That's true.
What do they gain by helping you?
Exactly. Absolutely nothing. Well, taxes.
Taxes.
That's about it.
They
can get that from the rich, though.
I heard two things that I didn't even
Sorry.
I said they can get that from the rich, though. They don't need a low-life,
That's very true.
poor person like me to...
That's very true.
And I said that they get very involved with your life, like with your marriage and other things that are not completely necessary to get involved with.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And
I recently saw the movie Free State of Jones. I don't know if any of you are... Connor, okay. So it's looking at a family during the time of the Civil War, and I distinctly made this connection. I knew we were going to talk about this topic, and I recently just seen it, and so in one part of the movie, this family is it's a really emotional part with where the little girls take up the guns.
Yep.
And so the Confederate government is coming to take blankets and the food and the hogs and chickens and everything from this family because they supposedly need it for their troops to have. And the brother of this woman whose house it is tells her, no, you're not going to let them take it. I'm going to stand here. So they find probably 5 or 6 rifles. And so they have these little girls holding them. So there's probably a little 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and maybe a 5-year-old holding these rifles when the Confederate government representatives come up to the farm. And what ends up happening is that they turn away and they don't ask for their food or anything like that. So I think that's really powerful, and it really shows what that amendment was meant to do. It's meant to protect you and your family from a tyrannical government and from government intrusion into your home, into your lives. not rightfully taking things that are yours.
My favorite line from that movie, from that exact scene, the Confederate soldier comes up and he's like, well, you got little girls holding your rifle. What, are they going to shoot us? And the man says, last time I checked, the gun didn't care who pulled the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
a good
deep.
line. That's a
It
good
is
line.
Deep.
Wow.
Fantastic
That's
movie.
very
But
deep.
again, you still have to pull the trigger.
That's right. Well, and since we're basically jumping right into it, I mean, the thing that has been brought up in recent times is gun control. We want people, Democrats and some people want mass gun control. We want to limit who can get it. We want all of this different things to happen so we keep guns off the streets and schools don't become a shooting range. This whole, I think it's BS. But at the same point, I think some gun control is necessary. So, Joe, what were you going to say? You raised your
Yeah, I got two things to add to that.
Yeah, what's up?
Well, the first one was kind of like the saying about the gun that, doesn't care. Because I love the saying about how apparently guns kill people, not people kill people.
Which is ridiculous.
Which is very stupid. If you've never held a gun before, there's a thing called a trigger where it doesn't make a mind of its own. We actually tested this out in the range one time, Connor, with his AR-15, his custom AR-15 that he built. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful gun, by the way. Yeah, on campus. And we tested this out. The safe was off and everything else, and we just let it sit there. And I don't think, you could tell me if you saw the gun go off and have a mind of its own to shoot anything.
Not
Did
once. We even yelled at it.
No, we yelled at it. We asked politely for it to fire,
Oh,
and
jeez.
it didn't do anything. So I think, case is closed. And for full disclosure, I think it's the person that has to be the one to pull the trigger to make a massacre happen.
Excellent findings.
It is.
Good study. I liked it a lot.
I think I remember watching that. Yeah, you yelled it, and I'm like, what are they trying to prove now? I loved it though.
He's just trying to prove the left side.
The illogical side.
Yeah,
correct.
And that's the thing. I think it also comes back to just a lack of education by a lot of people, because I don't think they understand. I think, well, Job, you and me were in a conversation with someone, and they had asked if the military uses AR-15s.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, no, it's more or less 3-round
They use
burst
an
guns.
M4, which is the automatic version of an AR-15.
Exactly. So, I mean, but that doesn't prove anything. But it comes down to people want to get rid of hunting rifles. They want to get rid of every gun that looks black and scary, but they don't quite understand or grasp the concept of what the Second Amendment was put into place for. Was for.
I also heard that they want to get rid of every semi-automatic handgun, or just every semi-automatic gun, which is all handguns, all rifles, except for bolt action, a lot of shotguns that aren't pump action, just anything that's not pump, lever action, or bolt action is a semi-automatic handgun.
So essentially, your
So all the guns that I have would be gone.
yes.
Yeah.
That is true. That was really loud. Yes, every single gun you own would be banned, and you're licensed to conceal.
Also,
carry.
I just want to point out that there's no such thing as a fully semi-automatic. It's
There is
either
not.
fully automatic or
semi-automatic. Exactly. That again, it goes back to lack of education. It's like, no, it's either fully automatic or it's semi-automatic. One pull, one.
And a lot of these people don't know, like they said, ban assault rifle. And it's like, okay, what is an assault rifle?
Right.
And they can't, a lot of people are like, the guns that shoot fast and multiple times. So every gun ever made,
Yeah.
besides...
I mean, the pile of crap.
Okay, I think we're Gucci. All right, we had a quick break. We had some come to the studio. Sorry about that.
What are we talking about? Oh,
Where were we?
We were talking about how we should ban all semi-automatic and not something more lethal like a shotgun
So,
or like
again, people are like, what's an assault rifle? And they can't come up with a definition.
Yeah.
Some people put a assault rifle on the fact that the stock moves up or forward and back,
Yeah.
which does nothing for the lethality of the weapon.
Well, and let's put it this way, if they want to talk about, how lethal a weapon is, that's ridiculous to say, but how lethal a weapon is, if you want to look at crime statistics from the FBI, now I have one up here. This is murder victims by weapon, 2009 to 2013, so kind of old studies, but whatever. Handguns, which can be concealed, which can be hidden very easily. In 2009 to 2013, the rough estimate of each one are about 6,000 to 5,000 deaths per year. Looking at rifles, about 300.
Well, not to mention that a lot of those are suicides. So
Exactly.
if you take out suicides, it's probably way less.
Exactly.
I'd like to just point out that you can make anything into a lethal weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I could
Which-
take the pen that's in my hand and stab Connor with it.
In fact-
and that would be a lethal weapon.
In Israel, they teach you to use whatever you have. There's
Exactly.
trainings where they take out pens and violently stab their opponent just to prove a point.
Exactly.
And if you hit an artery that's gonna bleed, you're gonna die.
So, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't think people understand anything. I could take this mic and beat the crap out of someone.
And then that automatically makes an assault microphone.
It would. Well,
Congratulations.
And this goes into what happened in London. This is what happens in London. So I think you guys remember this, but Sadiq Khan he's the mayor of London. He passed knife control laws.
Oh yeah, because it was too sharp, right?
Because here's an exact quote. Let me find it real quick. It says,
are too sharp.
It says, no excuses. This is a tweet that he sent out. It says, no excuses. There is never a reason to carry a knife.
How about opening boxes?
There's one illogical fallacy. Here's the second one. Anyone who does will be caught, and they will feel the full force of the law. Not just part of it, the full force of the law.
Oh, she's got a multi-tool. Oh no.
Look out, guys.
Oh, shoot.
Oh.
I just held up my Leatherman, my multi-purpose tool with lots of knives on it.
And what
that I
else?
carry
What else
with
does it
Give
have
me
on there,
your-
Laura?
It's got a pliers.
There's actually like a ruler indented in
That's cool.
here. There's like lots of just different tools, scissors, serrated blades.
But see, in London, that's a no-go. You're feeling the full force of the law.
I know.
And that's the thing. What are they going to do? Are they going to start literally banning my fists from being shown? If I can't ball my hands into a fist anymore?
Or, they'll just chop them off and then we can just punch people with our stubs. Like, what are they going to do? Just get rid of our body parts?
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to get to a point where we're going to get so ridiculous, we can't even use our own silverware to eat.
Yeah, it's seriously, because it's a fork.
Well, let's think about the actual problem here is the fact that some select human beings think that it's okay to just go up to someone and stab them or shoot them, or they feel angry at someone and so they feel the need to harm them in a violent way with a weapon. That is what the real issue here is. It's not about the gun and how easily accessible it is to something. Like, I could easily ask my dad and say, hey, Dad, I'd love to just see one of your guns downstairs in our gun room. Would you mind opening the door for me? He would definitely open the door for me, and I could definitely just go in there and take whatever I wanted. Now, he has control over all of the keys, and he has everything secure and safe in that room. But that wouldn't stop me from asking. He trusts me, so he would give it to me. I could easily go harm someone using a gun that we have. So
I mean, you could steal his keys when he was sleeping, too.
exactly.
Yeah, no, that is a real issue. I mean, that's a really valid point. I mean,
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to leave, a handgun fully loaded on the table with the 5-year-old running around.
Yeah.
That's just purely unsafe. But it really comes down to the person and their personality, and there's something wrong in their brain that says that it's okay.
that's very true.
Fun fact, it's not.
It's not.
I think it's also important that we focus on how families have evolved over time. Years ago it was, a mother, father, 2 kids. It's been proven that single parent families have a lot more time adjusting to the society, and a lot of those families are the ones that when school shootings happen, a lot of the times when you look back at the families, it's a single parent or there's problems with the father. There's no a lot of the shooters have no father figure to show what it's like to be a man, what it's like to take responsibility for your actions, that everything you do has consequences. And if we start working each other back to that, I feel like it would drop heavily. Because my grandma was telling us stories where they would bring their shotguns to school, leave them in their truck, and then after school go hunting.
Yeah.
And now we can't even bring a knife on campus because
it's a dangerous weapon.
Dangerous weapon because people have fallen out of the aspect of, other people matter. It's not all about me.
Yeah, no, exactly. That I think happens too. I mean, going back kind of to Laura's point too about people thinking it's okay to go kill people. I mean, you think about in Iowa, we're ranked last for mental health services and stuff like that. So in aspects like that, we really need to do, I don't want to say a better job, but a satisfactory job, a really good job of keeping guns out of people's hands like that, who have a mental issue, who have schizophrenia, who have an issue like that. And there probably is a kind of law like that, but maybe it's also enforcing a law that people who are in their house have to have a very sneaky way of hiding their guns, because you just can't keep it in a gun cabinet and keep the key in a secret place, because that person's going to find it. So again, it comes back to the person. And
if someone wants to do something, they'll find a way to do it. It doesn't matter how safe you make something.
Exactly.
Fun fact about safes: the door is the only thing that's really. It's like a 1/4 inch of sheet metal on the outside of every safe. The door is the only thing that's thick enough to stop anything. So if you take a rotary saw and saw on the side of the safe, you'll get in it within 5 minutes and get whatever you want.
Yeah, so then that's the issue. It's just like you can't really hide anything because you can get into anything and find something and at some point. So,
well, I recently went on a trip to Colorado, and so the person I was with, we went to the Columbine Memorial. Very, if you haven't seen it, Google pictures of it. It's not just some little, gravestone or anything. It's very elaborate. It's really beautiful. But so we were kind of reading about it on the way over there to kind of wrap our minds around what happened. And the two guys that committed the crime had originally planted these bombs underneath the cafeteria tables to go off. And then they were going to sit on a hillside by the high school and watch basically as this school blew up. And then as people would run out, they were going to shoot them. And the bombs didn't go off. You know what? Okay, that didn't stop them from going into the school and shooting 12 people. So that gets back to the point of, they wanted to do serious harm to the people in that school, faculty, staff, students, whoever, and they did it, unfortunately. And it doesn't matter what the weapon is, really.
It doesn't.
It's the fact that there was something really, really wrong with those two guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, there's a lot of terrorists who use bombs to blow up buildings. Bombs have been illegal in the United States pretty much since the beginning, and people still use them. So you can't use an automatic rifle or firearm in general because they've been banned. You can't go out and buy yourself an M249 unless you have you can, but it takes like a year to process the paperwork. You have to get a licensed 3 FFL dealer in order to sell it. There's a giant tax stamp. It usually takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to do it. Plus, on top of that, the automatic weapon that you choose is going to be running between $10,000 to $30,000. Yeah. So you can have one, but it takes a lot to get one. And people who go through those kind of hoops to get it aren't going to go shoot up a school or a concert with an M249.
No, because it takes years. And by that point, it's not worth it because there's a lot of money, a lot of time involved. Like, people want it now, and they're going to find a way to do it now. So...
And the if you have a mindset of a criminal is going to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Or
it's not like they're going to see the gun-free zone sign and be like, oh, I probably shouldn't go shoot up this place.
Wouldn't that be fantastic,
Well, every time I go anywhere with my dad, like when we go to church or maybe the mall or something, there'll be a sign that says, so and so, this company bans guns on these premises. My dad looks at me and goes, that means I should bring my gun in. 'Cause he has a concealed carry permit. But that is exactly right, because as soon as a criminal or someone who wants to do harm to people sees that sign, they're like, oh, I can just walk right in there. No one's going to stop me. There's probably not like a guard with an actual gun, maybe like a stun gun or something like that could maybe do me some harm, but I can just go in there and do whatever I want. And that is such a terrible thing.
It is.
Such a terrible
Oh yeah,
thing.
but that's their mindset. So like that's what they're going to think of. So the thing I always like to use as an analogy when it comes to this situation, when they're always talking about gun-free zones and how it's supposed to supposedly make it safer, I always think of it this way. If you were to think like a criminal, where would you like to go to? Would you rather go to a place where everyone's armed, or would you go to a place where everyone's defenseless? You would most likely go to a place where everyone's defenseless, aka a gun-free zone. So when they see that it's a gun-free zone and they're quote-unquote banned, they're gonna the criminal's not gonna look back at the Second Amendment or look at the rules and be like, oh, this is illegal. Maybe I shouldn't go shoot up this school or whatever it is. So,
like, no, that's not gonna happen. I worked at a gun club for 5 years, from my freshman year of high school until the end of my freshman year of college, and there are no crimes. Fun fact that just happened there aren't any, because everyone is armed, guns are loaded, like things are happening, and I have told people multiple times, like I work at this gun club, and the biggest question I always got was, well, aren't you scared someone's gonna shoot you?
No.
And
because I have a gun.
Well, and that, and I'm also looking around with the people that are there. I'm like, I'm not afraid of a single one of these people, because if one person went off, some random visitor comes in and starts shooting the place up, he's down in about a second, because there's someone else there with a gun. I have never felt more safe in an environment like that. I've never felt more secure with the people around me than when I am there. If I was to pick a place to go where I feel the most safe and secure and just comfortable, it would be that place. And I think it's because there you are educated about how to handle a firearm, how to address guests in a way when they have firearms and whatnot. So I think, like we were talking about at the beginning, a big part of it is education. And I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm scared of guns, I'm scared to hold a gun. Have you ever held a gun? No. No, just hold the gun. Like, yes, you're holding it, you're like, holy crap, I could do some real damage with this. But then, your morals come into check and you're like, I'm not going to. Like, that's as simple as it can be. And to really understand, you should go, try it out. If you're so scared of it, try it out. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to bite you. Obviously don't go buy one and then just shoot it behind Walmart. Why don't you go to a real gun range with a safety officer with you who can show you how to safely load and unload a gun, who, knows what they're doing, makes you feel comfortable, and then maybe you won't be so scared.
it's kind of like when you're on top of a skyscraper and you see the view and you're like, yeah, this view is scary. But your morals is like, yeah, no, I'm not just going to jump off this skyscraper.
Yeah.
Another great analogy is cars. You're looking at something that looks scary, and that's honestly how I felt until Connor actually educated me and let me hold his AR-15 and stuff. And it's scary at first. Just like everything else is when you try something new. But once you start trying it and once you get the hang of it, it's not as scary as it looks once you know what you're doing.
And once you pull the bang switch, it's really fun.
Yes.
Well, and kind of going back to I don't think people understand, if you get rid of all guns, that doesn't mean you're getting rid of the crime of guns. My example that I pulled up with that is Sweden. Sweden has they've banned all guns. We've solved the issue. Now we don't have any more guns. But now people are being killed by grenades. A 63-year-old man was killed by a grenade, according to, let's see, what was it? TheRedState.com. A man was killed by a grenade in the middle of a street in Sweden. He was 63 years old, had nothing to do with anything, and he got killed by a grenade. So the essence of getting rid of guns isn't going to do anything to anyone.
Sure, your gun crime will go down, but then something else will go up.
Exactly.
Like, look at England or all those places. Their gun crimes are down, but what about their knife stabbings?
Exactly.
They're up.
And unfortunately for Sweden, they opened up the floodgates for their country, and a lot of immigrants could come in. And now their gun crime rates are 5 times more than they were before because they did that, and now they introduced guns back into their ecosystem.
There's also this thing called the black market, which allows you to get whatever you want.
Exactly. People find a way. I think that's the moral of the story. People will find a way, but it's, yeah.
A great example that shows that if you educate yourself on these things, that you could have more of a safe country is Switzerland, where it's actually strongly encouraged that you should carry a firearm with you. And I think they have, I don't know if this is
not
correct.
Not just a firearm, but the military bring their automatic rifles home with them and keep them in their house when they're serving.
Nice. So if I remember correctly, Switzerland, I think, has the lowest gun crime rate in the world right now.
It's extremely low. I don't know if it's the lowest, but it's extremely low.
Yeah. So.
Also, they don't just go around being like, oh, it's okay to shoot people.
Mm-hmm.
They're all trained relatively enough to where they're like, if I pull this, serious things can happen to people. And not to mention that everyone is packing heat. So if I pull this, everyone else is going to pull it, and it's just going to be a giant mess.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand that, okay, there's serious consequences if I pull this.
Mm-hmm.
And that keeps them from pulling it unless they need to.
Yep. Another thing, so I think another issue we can establish that is raising this issue for gun control is I feel like this media really pushes out this issue and exaggerates it as a big deal, as it seems to do for everything else in politics. I don't think the media educates us more on the guns, and instead it just gives out a really bad portrayal of what guns are capable of and continues to focus on all of these shooting incidents where people are defenseless. So, the Florida shooting, the Las Vegas shooting, all of those different kinds of shootings where, it was a lot of people were defenseless and there weren't any people that were heroes, except people don't realize how many other incidences there are, or incidents where there's situations like the Maryland where someone was there with a firearm and he did his job to shoot the shooter before the person, criminal, sorry, just finding the word, but, a person that was there to shoot the criminal before anything else bad got out of hand,
There's a statistic from the CDC that states just brandishing your firearm stops a lot of crime. They say that firearms save roughly between a low estimate of 300,000 to a high estimate of about 3 million people a year.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not here stating that, we want people to die by guns. Like, we're not saying that people should go out and kill people. Like, we understand that these deaths happen and they happen year round, but just because they happen doesn't mean we should get rid of that tool, because it's a tool. A gun is a tool, and people can use them, potentially, in a bad and harmful way. But like you said, Connor, if it can save 300,000 lives, it's worth it in the end, honestly.
It reminds me of that sticker that I've seen on someone's laptop today where it said, it's a picture of a gun and says, "I am a tool, you are the weapon."
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
That is very good. That's very well stated, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But fun fact, trap shooting in the state of Minnesota is the fastest growing sport there, mostly because both boys and girls can do that and compete at the same level because the gun is the equalizer. So I was actually
He's over here smiling like a goof.
I was the manager for the trap team from my sophomore year until my senior year, and my sister was the runner-up in state her senior year for trap shooting. But like I said, never felt more safe or secure. That sport is extremely safe, and there are always trained professionals on the field with people that are shooting, with squads that are shooting, making sure that everyone's gun is safe, making sure that everyone is having an enjoyable time, that there's nothing that's going to potentially even go wrong that could harm someone. Mm-hmm. And it's the fastest growing sport in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I think that says something about, you know, the fact that people, at least in that state, love their guns. And you don't have to be a hunter to be on the trap team. You don't have to be a murderer to be on the trap team. You could just like the feeling of, hey, I hit the clay target and it broke.
Ooh, yay!
Like,
I would say everyone outside of Minneapolis, because Minneapolis, the only sole reason why Minnesota is a blue state is because of Minneapolis. Everyone in that state is, or in that town or city, whatever, is very liberal. It's
yes,
terrible.
I know.
It's, oh God.
I'm from the Twin Cities.
Oh, I am sorry.
Me too.
It's just crazy. But I want to get back a little bit to the whole gun control debate. It's something that's grasping at the cusp of the elections coming up here soon, especially here in Iowa. You know, you talk about, I don't think we really have had any major incidences with guns.
Incidents.
Incidents. Thank you, Joe.
We're struggling.
We are struggling.
English is hard.
It is very hard. I don't think we've had any issues, but in the at least in Iowa, we have the gubernatorial race going on. That's a big debate going on right now. And I'm going to pose this question to everyone: what kind of, if at all, kind of gun control is necessary, or is it even necessary at all?
I think the type of control we need is not guns, but people. So we should, instead of looking at how we can make the gun safer, we should look on who can get the gun, how they can get it, how long it takes for them to get it. You know, I just recently purchased a pistol, and purchased it online, and I had to ship it to an FFL dealer. It doesn't go straight to your house like people think it does. Goes to your FFL dealer, you sign your background check, and then if everything comes out fine, you get your gun. So I think in that essence that maybe the FBI could do a better job of keeping in the state, because it goes straight to FBI. But if states don't report the incidences of, you know, this guy has a domestic violence charge up against him, this person is a murderer, that kind of thing, the FBI doesn't get that, then the FBI can't do anything about it. It all comes up to the state and how well their police department reports these issues from these people.
Right. So it just comes down to a fact that our legal systems need to do a little bit better job on how they talk or how they come or report these crimes in essence. And then, of course, I think it also comes back down to education too. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, honestly, I think everyone at some point in their lives needs to be able to what do you want to say? Go through a hunter safety course, or just a course about handling guns, what they can do, how to clean one, how to do everything. Because again, I think they watch the media, and I think the media is also a big contributor to this false information that's being spread about guns. You know, they're saying assault weapons and murder and this and that, and it's just a bunch of hoo-ha that they just believe because it's on CNN. You know, if they were actually brought out to a shooting range, shown how a gun works and how to take care of a gun instead of just not doing anything at all, I think we would have a lot more people understanding how stuff like that works, because they're just basing it off of what they see on their one-sided political channels. I don't know. That's just how I feel about some of that gun control stuff, because they just don't know the potential for a tool like that to be used. The one instance I love was a YouTube video. I don't remember where it was, but this one person was, I think it was like at a crosswalk, and this one guy pulls out a gun, right? Gonna shoot someone. This other lady had a concealed carry in her purse, pulls out the gun, shoots the guy, and then, kicks the other dude's gun around. It's like, if that's not a perfect example of why concealed carry and the rights to bear arms is, I don't know what is. Because people could have died easily in that instance. But because she had a gun, and like you said, because it was brandished and, yes, fired off, people were saved. And I think he had injuries, but he wasn't dead.
No, people think just because you get shot by a bullet, you die instantly. It's like
It hurts.
hits you and you die.
It hurts, but
it depends
no.
on where you're shot. I can take a knife and slit your throat, and you could be
Easy.
dead faster if I just shot you in your femur.
I'm more scared of a knife because it's silent.
I'm more scared of a knife because there's more edges to it.
Exactly.
A gun, if the barrel is there, if you move out of the way of the barrel,
You miss.
you miss. It might be loud and hurt your ear, but you're not going to get shot by the bullet if you're not in front of the barrel.
Exactly. That's the thing. I don't know. I look at that kind of stuff, and like you said, I think it's more, if you want to call it, people control. Keeping it out of the hands of people who just don't are not mentally there to do it. Then
If you can't make a rational decision on a daily basis, you probably shouldn't own a firearm.
you probably shouldn't.
That's a big rational decision that you can
I
make.
mean,
that
I look at-
permanently ends people.
I look at your situation, Connor. When you come home, you have to lock your guns in your room because your father's there, and he has a mental condition, and you know that. It's like it's being mindful of that kind of stuff, So, I don't know. And again, I point back to Sweden as we continue on this massive gun control craze. Essentially, is what it is. I mean, we've gone through different crazes. I mean, first it was Black Lives Matter, and then it was fat acceptance, and then now it was LGBTQ rights, and now it's gun control. That's another big issue. And this quote from the Red States talking all about Sweden's gun control laws and everything, and it pulls a quote from another article, and it says, and this is talking about the rise in gun crimes happening in Sweden. It says, still witnesses are scared to talk and the police are stretched. No one firearm homicide case in Stockholm, Sweden was solved in 2016. The government hopes to turn that around. Police wages have been bumped up. The officers who left during a reorganization 3 years ago, which coincided with the rise in crime, have been rehired. Preliminary results for 2017 show that clear-up rate for firearm murders has risen to a still woeful 30% in Stockholm, but over 100 cases still remain unsolved. This is a country where they were like, okay, well, we got rid of stuff, and now they're trying to play catch-up, It's, I don't know, for me, it's such a difficult thing to say, well, we need to get rid of all of them because they serve a purpose.
I'd just like to put down just a little fun fact that I just read here. I think the leftists definitely have their priorities mixed up because just a little friendly reminder, we get a lot more abortions than we do with gun shootings. That's really depressing.
It kind of is. I mean, we talked about that in our abortion episode. That was a very interesting finding about like 300 some odd thousand abortions happen per year by Planned Parenthood.
And I think guns are like 50,000.
If that.
Yeah.
It's extremely, there's extremely more abortions than there are gun deaths in the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to hear more about the statistics, go to our abortions episode.
That was a very lengthy episode that we had a lot of great statistics on. And hopefully with this episode, we'll, of course, post all of our links in the description as we are moving to YouTube now.
Yes.
Yes, we're broke as college students, and we don't want to pay that price. No thanks.
It's a pain in the butt with SoundCloud Pro and stuff.
It very much is. I don't want to pay $14 to post stuff. I'm just posting to YouTube.
We're broke college students.
Which, by the way, by the recording of this episode 1 is up on YouTube for you guys to watch and listen to. So, pro tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to talk without prompts. What else should we cover?
Well, another thing I wanted to state, this was kind of my wrap up. This was kind of my idea to wrap up the episode, but I can mention this anyways. So we know that the as far as we know, the liberals' mindset on all guns. First off, we know that we actually have so many guns here in America, it's almost larger than our population right now. So we're talking about over 300 million guns, I believe.
It's roughly 322 million.
That's a lot of guns to ban.
That's about 11,000 more than we have in the U.S. right now. People, I should say.
And I'm going to use an example from an old legend that Connor told me because it's a freaking awesome story. And it goes back to one of the kings of the Achaemenid Empire. I don't know how they're pronounced. Yeah, I don't know how they're pronounced, but they demanded that the Spartans surrender their weapons to them. And King Leonidas, being freaking awesome as he usually is, has an epic response saying, Malone Labe, meaning come and take it. What I'm wearing right now, and I'm proud to wear it, is a come and take it shirt showing my Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
So if you liberals, if you want to take our gun rights, go. Come and take it.
That's you.
Good luck.
You talking about that actually reminded me of something. So, the argument that goes from the left, right, when talking about banning guns and gun control is, well, back when the Constitution was made, they didn't have the guns that we have today. They didn't have the guns like a semi-automatic or stuff like that.
But they did have a tyrannical government.
They did.
They also had cannons and puckle guns, which a puckle gun, if you don't know, is the very first invention of a machine gun. Basically, it's got like 9 barrels, and you have a crank, and you crank out ammunition. And it wasn't as fast as a machine gun, but it shot roughly 100 rounds per second.
Like, that's fast. And it's basically a minigun back in the 1700s. And it was...
And not to mention, yes, we didn't have AR-15s, but we had... the muskets that they had were the same muskets used in the Revolutionary War. So they had military-grade weapons at that time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not... That's an illogical argument because they had... Not like the guns we have today, but they were pretty deadly. And they had cannons. So... I think that's a little ridiculous to say that. Well, because what did you say, Connor, about the cannons? Like,
so there were ships out there, and the British were still mad that we won. Mm-hmm. So there'd be pirates out there, and they would try to take ships. Well, the civilians who had ships were able to have cannons to protect themselves against those people. To protect their life, liberty, and property. Mm-hmm. So they had cannons, they had muskets. I don't know how many people had puckle guns, but they had enough to protect themselves and their property against being taken over.
Exactly. And like I said, it's just an illogical argument to say that, well, they couldn't predict the future because they had guns that could do just as much damage.
I mean, it's not like they could look in the future. I mean, they wrote that knowing for a fact that technology was going to advance. It's not like they thought, oh, well, in 2016, we're still going to only be firing muskets.
Yeah.
They were constantly inventing new guns. By the by the Civil War, we had lever-action rifles.
Yeah.
And we were still using muskets with lever-action rifles.
Yeah, so it's just an illogical argument. And then,
no, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and then the argument. Well, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add on and say that the concept of making a gun has not changed through the centuries. As long as you have a lower receiver.
You have powder.
Oh yeah, powder.
You have a projectile. Mm-hmm. You have a trigger that ignites that powder and pushes the bullet out of the barrel. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now we've evolved from black powder and muzzle loading rifles to where we have the projectile and the powder in one place, and the primer that you use to hit is also inside that casing. But the function of a weapon is still the same. You hit the trigger. The trigger causes something else to go off, igniting that powder, hitting the primer, and sending the projectile out of the barrel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we've added rifling to make the bullet spin and keep it on course
Right.
better. We've done a little bit, but it's all mechanical. There
is.
is no electronics involved in a rifle.
No, and kind of the jump to the next thing that I'm trying to think about the arguments that people talk about, like why we should have full gun control. And the next thing that we kind of touched on is, well, you can just go to a gun show and buy a gun. You don't need a background check, the whole background check thing. Well, like Connor just talked about, he had to go through a whole background check, criminal investigation, background checks. And even then, he had to sign papers at the place. He couldn't just say, well, I have my gun. Can I take it? No, he still had to sign paperwork at the location.
Not to mention, if you order it online, you also have to pay an additional fee at the dealers because it's a transfer fee.
Exactly. So it's not just like, oh, I can go to a gun show and pick it up. No, you still go through the same processes. I mean, if you want to watch more of that, I think, Steven Crowder went to different gun shows, went to different gun
In
stores.
fact, he went to the same gun show that Obama said was handing out free rifles.
Yeah, and, well, it didn't happen. So if you want to watch that video, I think it's like gun control. I think it's like an undercover thing. I don't remember what the title of the video is called. But it's a great watch to kind of prove the point. It's like they just don't hand out guns. It's a process. Now, and I think, again, the only reason why they think that is because the media is saying, well, this 17-year-old kid, this 19-year-old kid, and they think, wow, he must have just went to a gun store and just, got a gun. And it's like, no, it's much more complex than that. We're just about time to wrap up. The last thing, I think, one of the arguments, which I want to wrap up on, that I hear way too often, and it makes me mad, is, well, let's just put a restriction on the Second Amendment. Let's just put a restriction on the First Amendment. And I tell people it's not that simple. For what it is, you cannot just put a restriction on the First Amendment for these kind of people or those kind of people, because freedom is either always free or never free for everyone. That's the thing I think people misunderstand about the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. You just can't put a block on it, or you just can't put this little thing that changes it, because then it changes it for everyone, not just the criminals. Not just the people who call others by slurs or whatever.
Once you allow the government to start controlling your life, that's when it becomes dangerous.
Exactly.
That's when they become tyrannical. If they know they can get away with this, then it's just slowly going to start moving until you have no freedoms.
That's about right. So you just can't wish for that, and that's why, again, I'm a little concerned for the Democratic leaders that are coming up into the world of politics, maybe not our age, but who have been looking at what the voters want, and it's illogical. It's all a bunch of illogical mess. They're trying to get rid of our guns. They're trying to get rid of our freedoms of speech. I don't want to say scared, but I'm worried, because then future voters won't have this freedom of speech and everything that we have. So that's just my concern, I guess. But I think that's about time to wrap it up. Any last final remarks before we go, guys?
Again, I'll wrap it up with this. You want to take our guns? Good luck.
Exactly. So we thank you all very much for joining on today's episode. Hopefully Dalton will be back next week for another episode when he's feeling a little bit better. My name is Tyler Bruner. This has been Job Saunders, Connor Essery. I'd point to Laura Peterson, but she had to leave, so I'm going to point where she was. And we shall talk to you guys next time. I don't know what the topic is. Do you know what the topic is?
I don't either.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
Our glorious leader is gone, so I guess we'll find out next week. So hope you guys have a fantastic time. And hey, check out the YouTube channel where we have every single episode of the podcast on there. And we'll talk to you guys more next time. Bye-bye.